Nintendo now says it has the right to brick your Switch if it thinks you're pirating games or modifying the console. Nintendo's specific new phrasing, distinct from its prior EULA from 2021, is that, quote, "You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and/or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part." There's also the very legitimate concern of the notoriously heavy-handed, litigious company acting on false positives. I don't know what means Nintendo has to detect such activity and kill a console, but I'm getting a clear message. You spent $450 on this hardware, but Nintendo does not think you own it. Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Hardlight Network. Another day and another reason to drop Nintendo entirely, or at the very least, find other ways to get your fix. You know, you could almost have a sort of backwards kind of respect for the way these shifty, underhanded companies just try to silently change their end-user license agreements under your very nose. If it wasn't for the more vigilant elements of the community, at some point or another, your library would simply disappear and your console would be bricked with absolutely no explanation. First, they came for our games, and now they're coming for our consoles. At this point, I'm absolutely convinced we live in the nightmare timeline because I never imagined a scenario where Nintendo would be allowed to repo its consoles from consumers. But that's what we're going to be covering in today's story, because now not only do you have no ownership over the library of games on your system, you don't even own the system itself, at least according to Nintendo's updated end-user license agreement. But before we get into it, guys, do me a solid and hit that like button if you like this video, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future, and also take to the comments section down below to share your outrage. Also, if you want to support this channel further, there are super thanks and memberships options down below. Be sure to join the channel today for access to exclusive content and perks that you can't get anywhere else. But without any further ado, let's get into today's article. And our reading today comes to us from PCGamer.com and is entitled, "PC Gaming Remains Undefeated. Nintendo now says it has the right to brick your Switch if it thinks you're pirating games or modifying the console." First spotted by GameFile, readers may encounter a paywall, Nintendo has recently changed its online user agreement in multiple consumer-unfriendly ways just before the launch of Switch 2. Chief among them, Nintendo asserts the right to render your console, quote, permanently unusable if it determines you're in violation of the agreement. Nintendo's specific new phrasing, distinct from its prior EULA from 2021, is that, quote, "You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and/or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. The restrictions in question are that you may not, quote, publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, disassemble, distribute, offer for sale, or create derivative works of any portion of the Nintendo account services. Bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. Obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo account services. Exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use, in each case, without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization, or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law. For context, the same section of the EULA used to read, quote, "You are not allowed to lease, rent, sublicense, publish, copy, modify, adapt, translate, reverse engineer, decompile, or disassemble all or any portion of the Nintendo account services without Nintendo's written consent or unless otherwise expressly permitted by applicable law." The sections I most take issue with are the prohibitions on copying, modifying, or decompiling software, particularly as it no longer accounts for it being, quote, expressly permitted by applicable law, as well as hardware, software modifications, quote, that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than in accordance with its documentation and intended use. No game or hardware modding, no extracting ROMs, something Nintendo continuously asserts we cannot do, even though it is a legally protected consumer right, and no dual booting to another OS. There's also the very legitimate concern of the notoriously heavy-handed, litigious company acting on false positives. I don't know what means Nintendo has to detect such activity and kill a console, but I'm getting a clear message. You spent $450 on this hardware, but Nintendo does not think you own it. There are plenty of legitimate reasons to jailbreak or modify a console, or extract a ROM from a game that you own. Many original Switch games run better via PC emulation than on the original console, and Nintendo is only just catching up to that capability with the Switch 2's potentially compromised backwards compatibility. Even more pressing is the inevitable discontinuation of proprietary online services, like we recently saw with the 3DS and Wii U. Just before that was finalized, Nintendo pushed an update to 3DS consoles, which made them harder to jailbreak. This is also something that makes Nintendo's subscription-based access to its classic games library all the more galling to me. And in the Nintendo's new EULA update, it now explicitly warns that it may discontinue its online services. In the face of such an unreliability, user modification of a device to ensure it remains fully functional is a perfectly reasonable solution. Going beyond legitimate hardware modifications, I'm a firm believer that piracy is as much of a question of service and convenience as finance, and Nintendo's moves to consolidate its own control of products people legitimately purchase are inconvenient, annoying impositions that will annoy fans and drive away customers. Amid an ongoing campaign against emulation, Nintendo continues to throw its muscle around, emboldened by the generation-defining sales success of the original Switch, but also clearly threatened by the rise of PC handhelds, emulators which run its own games better than the original hardware, and rumblings of future Xbox and PlayStation portables. I feel vindicated in my assessment that the Switch 2 is all stick and no carrot, lacking truly exciting industrial design innovations, except the Joy-Con mouse, which I actually quite like, or tech hardware improvements to set the console apart from a more crowded handheld market. The Switch 2 can only rely on name recognition, customer inertia, and console-exclusive games to move units, much like its living room-bound rival, the PlayStation 5. All three console manufacturers have well and truly left behind the plug-and-play, quote, "it just works" convenience that used to set them apart from PCs. And there's even more in the EULA that's worth flagging. As pointed out by GameFile, a change in the wording of the EULA for minors that places responsibility on their legal guardians seems designed to further head off embarrassing lawsuits like the infamous Joy-Con drift ones, ensuring such cases are forced into arbitration. Nintendo also joins in an unfortunate trend we can't even escape on PC, explicitly spelling out that we do not own our games and instead only license them. That last embarrassment aside, these odious impositions are a big part of why I'm largely a desktop and Steam Deck exclusive gamer at this point. I want to understand, modify, and be able to use the hardware I purchase for as long as I see fit, not be beholden to the proprietary standards of a notoriously consumer-unfriendly company. Sure, Microsoft keeps trying to push a new version of Clippy that lies and screenshots your credit card information, but Linux gaming only keeps getting better thanks to SteamOS. If things get bad enough in the house that Bill built, I'll make the move. I still love the original Nintendo Switch, but everything I've learned about its follow-ups make me think that the 2017 hybrid console was lightning in a bottle. And that's going to do it for the written article, guys, but you know me, I've got a few more things I want to talk about before we close out this video. First off, I want to say that the feeling of vindication is mutual because I've been a semi-pro Nintendo hater for several years now. Don't get me wrong, I have all of the nostalgia built up that everyone else does for the days of classic Nintendo, but at the end of the day, no one can hate you better than a former friend. I also need to state that this vindication is a Pyrrhic victory because it simply won't change much. Maybe a handful of people will see this video, and maybe a fraction of those people will decide to never purchase another Nintendo product. But at the end of the day, Switch consoles and other Nintendo future projects will continue to make record-breaking sales because of the exact problems outlined by this article. At the end of the day, the modern consumer is entirely too apathetic apathetic over the reality that they simply do not own the products that they purchase. As long as the shiny new toys continue to be rolled out at the appropriate deadlines, these abuses from Nintendo will be seen as all part of the plan. And unfortunately, all of the people that continue to defend these practices in the comment section of these articles and under videos like this are really just captured individuals stuck in the Matrix. If these people are truly content playing outdated, nostalgia bait games on overpriced hardware, it is what it is. For me, the truly gut-wrenching part of the article is the knowledge that you simply do not own a console that you've sunk hundreds of dollars into. I've made the argument repeatedly on this channel that the licensing issues were purely about control, and this change to Nintendo's EULA agreement has proven that in spades. And honestly, the knowledge is just offensive to the senses. Thankfully, I've got my old systems with physical hardware that aren't dependent on an internet connection, and I've got my PC which can run emulated games of titles that I love, so I can share those memories with my kids without being molested by an international company. But that is going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who has watched up to this point. I truly appreciate everybody that sticks around and checks out all of these videos. It's more bad news, and it sucks that it has to be that way, to tell you the honest truth. But before you leave this video, if you can do me a solid and hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future, and also leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this issue. Anything will truly help push these videos through the algorithm and grow this channel. I truly appreciate all the support from you guys as we hit new milestones on the way to 10,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome, and of course, I've got tons more to talk about in the future. So, as always, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.